That's me in the very beginning. Now I am a baby and getting zoomed from my mom to my birthday. I don't remember a lot about my younger life, but I remember it was fun and I felt so safe. My mom and dad always happy. I guess my mom's sister was mad that my dad was so great, so she called the police and said he hit my mom. We were all reading and they came. I heard my dad yelling, "There, no way!" My mom was crying loudly. Some lady took us away. The court said my parents abused and neglected us. They only loved us. The caseworker lied. I never saw my parents again. I'm still hoping one day they come. I am a victim of CPS and so are my parents. We need to find justice in all of this madness for all of us that are being abused. It's not fair. Every kid I know has a mom and dad. I know they miss me. I bet they fight every day for me to come home.
Don't get caught like us. Know your rights.
Psalm 127:3. Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from Him. This suggests children are a precious gift from God to be valued and cared for.
In the United States, a child a minute is taken into DHS, CPS, and so on custody. The reality is their picks are already selected, you just don't know it. Being perfect no longer matters. It's what the adopting families are looking for.
Who is it stealing the children, you ask?
From caseworker to the White House, the buck stops at all levels, just not where it is supposed to be. The services your family needs, we the people have paid for to ensure your reunification. Title 4 says, reunify at all costs, united. We stand means nothing to us when it comes to family values. Children are being ripped away from their families. Parents are reverting to addictive behaviors to cover the pain. The trauma caused by child removal is just being recognized, and the results are atrocious. Termination of parental rights is not healthy for anyone, just profitable for the people enforcing the lie.
It's time Washington listens to the cries of our children, the wails of their mothers, and the rage growing in the fathers. These are our children. Keep your damn hands off them. We are coming to act on the behalf of the children God gave us to protect and you kidnapped.
In the United States, CPS makes upwards of $3 billion per day on trafficking and selling our children. The corruption may start with the caseworker, but goes through the judicial system, passing the governor through the Senate and into the White House. The entire system has a hand in the business known as CPS.
Our children are stolen every minute of a 24-hour day. They are being robbed of their innocence, their trust, their happiness. As parents, we are isolated and betrayed by a government we trust. States are balancing budgets on kids' lives. Only 12% of the kids taken will be reunified. Title IV funding is being riveted with fraud.
All right, everybody, welcome. This is CPS Victims Hunting Justice. I am your host, the CPS Punisher. This is Thursday Eve, which means what? It means that another night where a family is suffering, that CPS is knocking on their door, and hopefully they've watched these shows that all of us have produced, from the Wicked Warriors to us, to Vincent Davis, to all of us that are out here educating and keeping everybody enlightened on the ways to act when CPS shows up at your house. It's important. It's very important that you all listen and take in what we talk about, because when you have CPS knocking on your door and you're not taking these measures because you haven't learned them yet, it's already too late, people. CPS has got your number. They're inside your house. They're going to get your children, and you're going to be racing like hell tomorrow, like all of us have, to find out what we have to do to get our kids back. It's not a good feeling. It's the most lonely, actually, the first day that it happens to you, it's almost this feeling of, this has never happened to anybody else, and you're waiting for the justice police to come swooping down and take care of this right away. You're waiting for the judges to realize this, the police. You're writing to Congress people. You're writing to these people like, hey, they took my kids, and that you are one of none. You are one of none. You're the only one that this has happened to, and someone has to listen. They have to, right? Wrong. There's a child a minute in this country taken by CPS. One child per minute. There are millions of us out here that have been affected by child protective services. There are millions and millions of children. In the past 9 years, is over 10 million children have been taken into custody by child protective services. Here's a stat for you. 86% of all the children recovered from child trafficking come through child protective services, and that's a worldwide stat. So just so you know, you're not the only one that this has happened to. Justice is not coming for you. So listen to what we have to say. And also, please, guys, share this show, like and subscribe, thumbs up, share it, all these things that you can do on this. Please, in the chat, why don't you leave your names also, or in the chats, put what state you're from so we know what states we're dealing with. And all of these little things help the show get more notoriety so that we can educate more people with these guests that we have and our crew here. So without no veil, I'm gonna, you know what, tonight we got everybody here, so I'm gonna bring out our friend Ashley. We got lawyer Charles here. We got Melissa, and we got the law guru Herbert, or Herbert. Everybody, how we doing tonight?
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, we'll try
That's okay.
that. Echoes out. Herbert, got to fix the echo. How we doing, guys?
All right.
All right. Ashley, what do you got going on? Anything going new in your case?
So yes.
Yes.
So, yeah, there is. My case is so exponential. So we'll start with the Washington, D.C. case. Because I filed one in Louisiana, on the federal court in Louisiana, but I filed one in Washington, D.C. in the federal claims court.
Mhm.
So they accepted my case exponentially fast. Like, they got it on
Yeah, it was like 24 hours, right?
Yeah, 24 hours. Well,
In the court of claims, they accepted your case?
What's that?
In the court of claims, they accepted your case?
They did.
And in Washington, D.C. And can you tell me how did you frame your case up there? That's very interesting.
I framed my case under not just civil rights violations, but under the American Disability Act, under the IDEA, under the Rehabilitation Act, under Section 504, because there's no immunity under those laws. And so, in addition to the corruption that's involved with our case, I also cited, of course, the violations of our First Amendment right, our Fifth Amendment rights, our Fourth Amendment rights, our 14th Amendment rights, our Fifth Amendment rights, Sixth Amendment rights. It's just all the amendments.
Court of claims is usually for claims against the United States. Are you're filing?
this
against
is where
guys?
yeah, because I filed so many reports with OCR though, and because I have the state's attorney on audio recording telling me his hands were tied and that he really couldn't do anything. And then the attorney general's office, who I have an audio recording saying that they were advised not to investigate my case. All directly related to my uncle, who's a Third Circuit Court of Appeal judge here in Louisiana, who I reported for raping me at the age of 5 years old, and sexually assaulted me until I was nearly 10. He sits on the DCFS board and the governor's board. His brother is also the former executive assistant to the former governor over the state of Louisiana. He just recently left office, John Bell Edwards. The judge in the case was the sister-in-law of the former governor, who donated money to my uncle's campaign. So last week, I saw that the judge pulled my case before letting the Department of Justice respond, because because I filed so many reports with OCR, everything from violation of my daughter's, fair and appropriate public education, which it started there because I lost my First Amendment right back in 2020. The First Court of Appeal overturned that decision last year, gave me back my First Amendment right. I was advocating for her education. She's medically homebound, gave her less than 30 hours of education and 3 years. So unfortunately, my case ended up becoming very entwined, and I didn't realize how politically connected my uncle was when I reported him initially. And so with that said, Sarah Edwards, who is the daughter of now Bates, she's married, who's the daughter of our former governor, John Bell Edwards, is, I can't make it up, the director of communications to our president of the United States in the White House.
Wow. Holy
Oh,
smoke.
sweet Jesus. The judge in the case pulls my case out of nowhere. When I submitted it to the court, they accepted it and changed the defendant to the United States, right? Because I had so many OCR reports that were like they dismissed or they didn't address, or I would report to the Department of Justice multiple times, not just the Office for Civil Rights, but also the Department of Justice. And when you do file those federal reports, it falls under your state government. So even though it's a federal government agency, it falls under your state government. So that's who I had on, the state's attorney who I had on audio recording, and the FBI in Louisiana. I have an audio recording telling me that initially who had taken my report and all that, everything that was going on, gets on and says, I have them on audio saying, well, we were told to stand down. So this judge pulls my case and closes my case. And cites Rule 58, saying that there was no jurisdiction, except Rule 58 doesn't cover jurisdictional issues under the federal civil.
Rule 58 of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure is motion for new trial.
Exactly. It's not, he cited that was for jurisdictional issues. Okay. So that's not what he said. If you open that again, you're in trouble. So
Can you send me your complaint? Because this is very interesting.
Yes, I can. I did submit. I definitely will. I actually submitted a 60+ page motion for reconsideration. And the irony in it, when they sent me the letter that he had closed the case, it says Ashley Kellett versus the United States of the United States. So, because he put on there that because the defendant wasn't the United States, that's why. Well, the clerk of court had already changed the defendant on my behalf, which it says under the rules that they do for you, right? So I'm like, something's not right. When I called and spoke with Mr. Wims over there at the Federal Court of Claims, he said, something's not right. I agree with you, and I'm correcting it right now. He said, I'm so sorry about that. So he said, while I'm on the phone with you, I'm emailing the judge, and this was on that was on March 29th. I said, why would he just randomly pull my case? The case had just been accepted 3 days before. And so it made no sense for him. And then what he cited, you can tell he didn't read any of my complaint, because he cited just like one little verbiage. I'm like, which was about my First Amendment right that was taken from me in 2020. But he cited that. And I was like, that's not even what I covered in my complaint. I covered kidnapping. I covered like First Amendment right was like bottom of the totem pole. I covered 14th Amendment right violations. They abused my disabled daughter.
Okay, but just let me see if I understand right. You're saying that the judge dismissed the case, or the clerk dismissed the case peremptorily?
Yeah, like the judge did. The judge pulled the case before they even responded, before the Department of Justice responded, and said that it wasn't jurisdictional. But he cited Rule 58. He didn't even cite the right civil code. I'm like, this isn't even, it didn't even match. And I noted that in my motion for reconsideration, but I also noted that the former governor of the state of Louisiana and his sister-in-law, Blair Edwards, who was the judge in the first 5 hearings of my case, which we weren't allowed into those hearings, of course. We didn't know this. And there was no signed or sworn affidavit. Well, John Bel Edwards' daughter, Sarah Edwards Bates, she is the director over communications to Biden, which I actually emailed the president of the United States about 8 months ago, maybe 9 months ago. Never heard anything from him. Over my
You have
case.
the president's actual email address?
I called the White House.
Oh, all right. There you go.
I'm not kidding.
Right.
They
Hell
gave me
yeah.
the
Why not?
instructions.
Go for it, man.
I was like, I'm going to get they were abusing my daughter. Like, they kidnapped my you
Right.
know, like what they did. They strangled her. They burned her. They bruised her. They put her in the home of a felon. And she was the neighbor of the disciplinary council's mother in the state of Louisiana. My uncle sits on 7 boards.
Hey, Ashley,
Yeah.
why don't you tell him a little bit about your kids and their handicaps?
Peyton has Down syndrome. She has autism. She also has something called CVID, common variable immunodeficiency. Essentially, that means she has no immune system. She doesn't produce any antibodies to bacteria or viruses. And so she's had over 40 hospitalizations because of that. I'm a registered nurse. I have never committed a crime in my life. Like, I've gotten 1 speeding ticket. That's when I was going to a hospice patient. These people set me up to be arrested for an annoying phone call I never made. They shipped my baby, who's disabled. They took 3 children from me, 2 of which were disabled. They put 2 in the home of my estranged father and stepmother, and then 1 that was the center of the Livingston Parish court case where I was sued for my First Amendment right. My daughter made World News Daily in 2020, made Inquisitor. They shipped her 4.5 hours away from my home and put her in the home of a felon who was on the government watch list. The screening council for the Louisiana bar, who oversees, the disciplinary actions to determine if there's going to be an investigation. Her mom is the long-term neighbor of the foster mother that Peyton was staying with. And this woman did permanent damage to her right forearm. She burned her, and there was bruises on her little pubis bone. And my little girl can't tell me who hurt her.
It's just so freaking awful. It's so terrible that they can get away with it.
I kind of, I mean, not to back to the boring procedural stuff, but I mean, that's kind of what I do, I guess. But
they denied us counsel. So, like, my uncle sits on the indigency board for the state of Louisiana for the Civil Indigency Foundation. And I have an audio recording for 7 months, them lying to us. Like, I have everything on audio recording. I have the head over the public defender's board saying, if you don't stop trying to expose political corruption, you have a 0% chance of getting your kids back. So you have 2 choices. You can either be right or you can get your children back. So which is it? Do you want to be right or do you want your kids back? Yeah. I played that on Facebook, and within 10 days, I had my children back in my home. There's no signed or sworn affidavit. The investigator was fired. Her boss, who told her to focus on Munchausen's by proxy, which I do not have any psych history. But that's all in the discovery, like in the internal emails. She testified, the investigator testified under oath that she didn't even question what she didn't. She didn't question me or my children's father or my older son about anything she put in the affidavit. She didn't investigate at all. Like it's just exponential. If you saw all the corruption, now the Judiciary Commission opened an investigation into Judge Blair Edwards, which is the sister-in-law of the former governor, and there's still currently an open investigation. And that's been going on now for about probably 14 months. They've been investigating her. She forged paperwork. They held the 24-hour hearing and the 72-hour hearing simultaneously. We were in the virtual waiting room. They never allowed us into the courtroom. And I have all that in audio. We called in, they helped us into the virtual waiting room, called back. They said they were sending someone into the courtroom to let us know. And then on text message with the investigator telling me that we were waiting our turn and that she didn't have time to review the medical information I had sent her. But in the complaint, she put that she couldn't verify any of the medical diagnoses. Well, I'd sent her like half my kids' my chart. I don't know why she couldn't verify it. I sent it to her the day before. And then after they finally did remove Peyton, which the ADA, the assistant district attorneys, submitted multiple false statements into the record, like Peyton lost her foster care placement on January 30th. She said Peyton lost her foster care placement, except Peyton wasn't moved out of that home until almost March. So because she said that she lost her foster care placement because of me, because of my social media post, but that wasn't true. She hadn't lost her foster care placement. She never was moved from that home. They also knew that the woman was a felon. I have the email showing where they knew that the woman was a felon. It says Miss Kellett found out about the arrest of Miss Hawkins. It doesn't look good. But in court, they testified under oath that the woman had been vetted correctly. So, like, they lied under oath, and their attorney knew it. So when the screening counsel refused to investigate the attorney who was remitting all these false statements, I'm like, something's not right. That's when I ran a background check on her and found out her mom was the neighbor and co-defendant in a lawsuit with the foster mother of my daughter. She put her address on my chart. That's how I found out who she was. I did a reverse lookup on the address and found out that's how, like, I'm a certified case manager. So like I'm an investigator by nature. I dig. My mom and my grandmother were paralegals for 30 years. My pedophile uncle's a judge. I grew up in law firms my whole life. So I was not going to stop until I still don't have my disabled son back. My adjudication, everything was over time frame, 60 days over, 30 days over. Like, I submitted everything, motion to dismiss because of the time, motion to vacate, a motion for recusal. They ignored everything I submitted into everything. They didn't acknowledge anything I submitted. Nothing at the 21st ADC. So my uncle's brother's wife, the sister-in-law of my uncle, works at the 21st with the judge. I can't make it up. It's just it's very corrupt. So I was more than happy to send you that complaint. There's and then my motion for reconsideration, which he hasn't ruled on still. I don't know why. Like, he would have pulled my case and just closed it, and then the rationale behind the civil code of procedure doesn't match up to what he's citing for the reason he's closing the case. Like, it doesn't match. So something's off. Something's not right.
Well, let's say that Rule 58 business, that almost sounds like a typo. That's so completely off. But judges make typos.
Charles, excuse me. What happens in a case if there are typos and errors like what you were just talking about? Let's say that was just a typo, or let's just say it was a typo. They messed up on that. How do you proceed with that? And is there like a big impact from that, or does it depend on what the error is?
Not really, because it's so obvious. I think I know exactly what's happening, and it actually relates to a thought that I had during the intro program. Your introductory montage. There's one major error in your introductory montage, where you say it may start with the caseworker. It does not start with the caseworker. It starts with a federal law we were talking about the other day. And
Right.
so, I mean, in a sense, Ashley, is that your name, Ashley?
It is.
Okay, sorry, I'm thinking about so many things at once. Ashley was correct to go to the U.S. Court of Claims, but she probably didn't frame it quite right, because basically it is federal policy, this business of removing one child a minute. That doesn't happen nationwide unless it's a national policy. And
Right.
it's every much. I mean, somebody mentioned the other day the removal of Indian children. Was that on this show or was that somewhere else?
No,
I heard that somewhere too.
But anyhow, very recently in my consciousness, somebody was talking about the removal of Indian children being one of the earliest interventions by the federal government.
Yeah, it was yes. Yep. It was yeah, I was here. It was
with Connie.
yes, with Connie, correct. Yes, sir.
The very first night I was here, yes. Anyhow, the Indians, of course, can take their claims to the Court of Claims because the Indians are literally treated in the Constitution as wards of the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment, in essence, we're all wards of the federal government now.
Right.
And we aren't used to thinking that way, but we are all. I mean, why are they trafficking in children? It's because they're really trafficking in human beings generally.
Mm-hmm.
We are all chattel property of Uncle Sam, and they just don't like to admit it publicly, but clearly we are. And so, I mean, there is a rational way to frame this in the Court of Appeals, but it sounds like you were basically raising state court claims.
Well, I also mentioned that I didn't feel like I could not possibly receive a fair trial in Louisiana because my uncle is the sitting past president of the Judges Association. I showed all the connections. Where else am I going to go?
Where are you in Louisiana? Because I'm in New Orleans.
Oh yeah, I just came from New Orleans. My daughter was in the hospital.
Oh my God, where are you?
I'm in Livingston Parish. I'm in Denham Springs.
Where?
In Denham Springs, Louisiana.
Okay.
But I was just in New Orleans today. My daughter was just discharged from Ochsner, like today. She's been in the hospital for the last 8 days.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. Which Ochsner?
Right there off of Jefferson.
Okay, so you're in Jefferson Parish.
Yeah, she was on the main at the main hospital, pediatric ward.
I'm basically in downtown New Orleans.
Okay. Woo. You're right there. Yeah, I know.
This ratty-looking chimney behind me dates back to 1788.
I love old houses.
Those bricks.
That's not ratty. Like that's like architecture. Okay, like I love stuff like that, but that's just me. So, I mean, I love it. Hyperglory.
But it's old.
Go to bed. I'm trying to tell my kids to go to bed. There's just so much involved with my case. I think if you took a look at it, your mouth would probably fall open. Especially with all the proof I have too. Because I'm a nurse, I'm very meticulous about like notating everything. Like I have an audio of the regional director on audio saying that she never had an order from the judge, that she was just giving information to her supervisor to take my kids. I mean, like I have the police officer standing at my door that day saying he knew in advance that they were not coming because of their dad. They were coming because of me. Like it, but in the affidavit, it says because of their dad. So it's very, very, very corrupt. They omitted the police report that showed that, my disabled son, he lied, which I already knew he did because he told me he did. They omitted their dad's hair follicle that showed that he relapsed on alcohol, but there was no controlled substances, in his blood, like in his hair follicle. He had a hair follicle done. Except the judge says, well, because he said the word ice, because he was actually looking for ice for his cup, like that he stopped at the gas station, right? And so like he does ice water with lime or lemon, whichever, and Splenda all the time. And so the ice machine was broken at that gas station. And so because he said the word ice, that meant that Matt was positive for cocaine. Matt, I've never done a drug in my life. Okay, Matt looks at me and he's like, "Actually, that's not even what ice means." I was like,
Oh
"Oh
no.
my god!" But they omitted the hair follicle. They didn't call the detective as a witness, right? They didn't, which is so dumb. Why would they not? They breached our HIPAA, our SAMHSA, and all of our health portals. They breached my health portal and his health portal. They breached the Privacy Act, which, the Privacy Act carries civil remedies. The HIPAA and SAMHSA doesn't, but they carry fines, but they do not carry civil remedies. But the Privacy Act does. And so, I could not. They omitted the police report altogether. And then they refused to give me any copies of any of the transcripts other than what I have. I only have 3 transcripts, and we have many more after that was ordered by the judge. They refused to give them to me. So they held them up, which they did with my Livingston Parish court case. If you look up my name, Ashley Kellett, it will pop up like that, like where we made like World News Daily, Inquisitor, all that on there, where Livingston Parish School Board sued me for my First Amendment right. But they did the same thing in that case too, where they would not give me my records. I didn't know that the judge at the time, of course, had just done a deal where it was supposed to be under wraps. The judge in my case, who took away my First Amendment right, she falsely imprisoned a man also. They did some type of deal, and the man got $100,000 settlement. It was supposed to be a non-disclosure, but someone leaked it to the press. His name is Jason Lemoyne. And so I didn't know that at the time, but it's just a big, huge, the corruption in my case is exponential. So
speaking of that corruption, hey, Kenneth wants to know how you would get rid of a biased GAL and judge from an active child in need of care case in Kansas. I mean, I would just say that
report him to the judiciary.
I was just suggesting that he contact me privately, because I would need to know more about that. I mean,
right, but in general, you would put to move to have the judge recused, right? Like that would be the first steps in these things, and then so on and so forth.
You have to have a reason.
For generic answer for this guy,
Hold on, everyone. You got to remember, Darren, he's a step parent. He's not the primary parent, so he's got to tread carefully about attacking the judge.
Understood.
But the GAL, he's just got to use the GAL's rules against them and then request the disqualification of the GAL.
Is there a bias? Is there a previous bias? Does he know the judge personally?
Well, he is a step parent trying to go for custody of the child.
But that's not determined yet either. So we don't even know, because he's insisted that
he is at least a step parent. Until we get proof that he's a primary parent, we can only go off the argument of step parent. But he doesn't need to piss off the judge yet, because as a step parent, or I should say an ex-step parent, because he is now divorced, you don't want the judge to deny his party status that they currently allow.
Well, just a little bit of a lecture on recusal. Recusal 30 years ago used to be something that judges did as a matter of honor.
Yes.
If you suggested to a judge that he was showing any bias at all, or he had any potential conflict, he would recuse himself instantly. And basically,
they laugh and ask if you have a problem with it.
Yeah, no, exactly. But basically, I saw this transformation during the 1990s, basically, that in Texas, at least, Governor Bush basically started appointing judges who believed they had the power to oppress. And after he became president, this became national policy in the 8 years he was president, and they started changing. I was working for
what became the policy?
To resist recusal at all costs. And basically, I spent some time working for judges, and in the 80s and 90s, judges were taught that they should recuse themselves at the slightest hint of bias or impropriety. and during the Bush governorship in Texas and Bush presidency in the United States, they changed the judicial education. They changed the judicial manuals. They changed all the instructions for judges nationwide that you should fight and you shouldn't give up any case unless you absolutely have to.
Wow.
And the cases, if you look at the transformation, I mean, it is close to impossible.
They've kind of knuckled down here in Louisiana though in the last few years about transparency and stuff. Like, don't you think? I don't know on a federal level, but like, I mean, I don't know if that's like just politics.
I have not seen a lot of judges recusing themselves.
I agree with that. I agree that there's not a lot of I do agree with that. I don't think that there's a lot of self-recusal. I think that people are having, like, I had to, like, Judge Cash at the 21st sat on the Civil Industry Board with my uncle, and I had to bring it to his attention, which he already knew. I had already told him that. But until I put a motion in, he wouldn't. You're right. Just like he's saying, the resistance thing. I guess that is true. What he's saying before.
Sorry. Doesn't the definition of bias not really necessarily mean the bias of you yourself? Isn't it in the eye of how law looks in law? It's not the judge's bias against you as a person. It's as long as the judge in law appears to be law and that you're going out that way. Correct about that, Charles?
No,
it's not like the judge's bias against you. Law just has to appear as law, right?
Not correct at all. As a matter of fact, the cases say that you cannot recuse just because it appears that he got the law wrong. You absolutely cannot. If he's got a strong...
the law has to appear as lawful. Law, like this, as long as the integrity of the legal system is held up, bias can still remain functioning.
Well, but
as long as to the people that the law looks like the law is fine.
The bias has to. Usually the bias. I'm not an attorney, and I know you have a lot of experience with this, but from what I've read, at least in Louisiana, the bias has to be usually case specific and person specific.
Yeah. And it cannot have anything to do with the with the judge's application of the law.
Right.
No,
they won't even look at it.
How it appears to the people, because if the court's integrity goes down, then that is that.
No, it has nothing to do with that.
I'm going to get you guys an example.
I mean, that's kind of the old 80s and 90s vision of recusal.
Right.
It's not like that anymore, though, Darren. It has to be specific, like my uncle, who knows like all the Supreme Court justices, right? Like, because of my relation to him and his political pull with the governor and all that. That's case and personal specifics, like, because it has to be like it has to be so many I'm related to him by two second generation, like, so like my nanny, who is my mother's only sibling, is married to him, right? So like his children are my first cousins. I grew up with him my entire life. So because of his relationship with me, familial association, like, and because of what's going on, there's an open investigation, or at least there's allegedly an open investigation against what he did to me in East Baton Rouge Parish. In addition to like everything that had occurred, and the way it's occurred has been retaliatory, and there's not one piece of my case that I cannot connect my uncle to. Like, so because of that, it has to be case specific, or like if there's ex parte communication where a judge speaks to another party, you know, like my uncle has been before the ethics board. Like, you can look up Guy Bradbury.
And Ashley, you should explain the fact where your uncle tried to pay you off to shut you up.
He did. Yes, he offered me $20,000 at non-disclosure that I turned down. And after I did that, the gloves were off for him. And I actually have an email showing that where I said I was very concerned about retaliation from him because of his political pull. But it's from his attorney. It's on email from his attorney offering me $20,000 in a non-disclosure. And he sits on the DCFS board. He's literally on the board of directors. He's also on the appropriations committee for the public defenders board. And who didn't get a public defender? You're looking at her. He also sits on the Raising the Bar Foundation. he's the VP over that. So like and he also said he was the vice chair over all children's issues for the entire Governor John Bel Edwards administration. Actually, he's been appointed by every governor for the last 20 years.
Wow.
On children's issues. Yeah.
Louisiana, I tell you.
Yeah, I know, right? So like that when I decided to go public, it was because he was already putting his hand in my other case. I did it to protect my sister. I was never supposed to go to public. That was not the plan. But when I went public, and I had no idea at the time he was running for an appellate seat. He's at the Third Circuit Court of Appeal. Our current governor, who I emailed the day before my kids were taken, the night before my kids were taken, and the week before my kids were taken, requesting a full investigation into my uncle after I busted EBR parish sheriff's detectives lying to me on audio. And then how about the Attorney General's office? His address is on all of my motions. And an assistant attorney general was representing my kids at a sink hearing. Have you ever heard of that? Because I haven't. Yeah. His name's not on there, just his address. That's the same one I have an audio recording saying they were advised not to investigate my case. So there's just way more than meets the eye with my case. And I'm not someone who's going to go down without a fight one way or the other. They're going to pay for what they did to my daughter. They're going to pay for what they've done to me. I want justice. This is what he did to me was wrong. He didn't just do it to me, though. I'm also a witness of what he did to my cousin, which was his only daughter. And so is my sister. So there's 2 eyewitnesses to what he did to Missy. And my father, who also knew what he did to Missy. See, they didn't tell my daddy what he did to me, but I have other adult witnesses of what they did to me that came forward in 2020. I had no clue that other family members were aware of what happened to me. They came to me and told me that they knew.
Well, and wasn't he going into group homes?
Yes, I have a call on audio from a guy who said he would actually go on record. His father is an FBI informant. And he said that there's a group, it's not a group home, it's actually a juvenile facility, like for kids who have been convicted of different crimes. And they were making complaints of my uncle going in there and sexually assaulting them, and they did not believe them. And until they saw my post on Facebook, and they were like, where did she come from? Like, is this a joke? Is this a hoax? They looked into me and realized that I was legit. And it was just, he's like, it was coincidental. He's like, we couldn't believe it. He said, but then everyone started believing these kids who were making these reports against your uncle. I was kind of floored. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, but ultimately, when you have when you have my uncle who's connected so well, I mean, I needed it. And I've been blackballed from getting an attorney. I've contacted over 80 attorneys, and no one wants to touch my case with a 10-foot pole. I don't
know 80 attorneys.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's like everyone's been instructed not to touch it. So, like they've completely sabotaged our entire life. They've ruined our entire life. They've I can't even tell you what they've done to our life. They've kidnapped my adult disabled son now. It's what's happened is exponential. And I have proof for all of it. It's not like I'm just saying things and I'm just blowing steam. I have the proof and the black and white evidence to show you. I have to support what I'm saying is true. I have their divorce. My nanny filed for divorce for my uncle when all this occurred. She stopped the divorce the day before it was final. I found the divorce paperwork. I went to the EBR parish court, got the divorce paperwork, and one little paper in there, it's a criminal case. It's not a civil case. When I read it out to them, that's a criminal number. Allegation 1 denied, allegation 2 denied, allegation 3 denied, allegation 4 denied, allegation 5 denied. All the way, it's 8 allegations because she had reported what happened to me and Missy. Guess what page is missing? The allegation page. That page is missing. Conveniently, it's pulled out. But that page doesn't match any of the other stuff that's in there. So that's injury to public record. I'm just saying that there's something there. And one of those attorneys, Chester Boyd, is dead, but the other attorney, Mr. Ryland, he's alive. And so he has got to have the original of that filing. That my nanny, because that was my nanny's attorney. He has to have the original filing of that. He has to have it somewhere. I mean, I know it's been a long time, but still. I mean, I just have to believe that there's justice in this somewhere.
Don't hold your breath.
You know, my God's bigger than that. My God is much bigger than that. My God's bigger than all of that. And he doesn't play. I may not be capable of it. You may not be capable of it, but he is. So that's what I do.
That's it. Hey, I found a pretty good explanation here. I'm hoping that I'm right about this on this video, but I want you guys to check this out. It's a quick little excerpt here.
Okay, go ahead.
This is a bias explanation for everybody here. We can, since we're on that subject here, let's look at what they consider to be bias in the courts here.
All right.
Let's see.
I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm stopped up. My daughter got me sick.
All right, here we go.
And send me your email address, and I'll email this to you.
Oh, what am I slow for here? Oh, there. Sorry about that.
Here,
where do we go here?
How to use
At its core,
I know I'm really bad at that. I'm not good at that.
There you go. All right, there we go. Sorry about that.
I can save your life though. What is that?
There we go. Melissa keeps. Oh, it's me, Melissa.
I can't hear it.
She refused to listen to any evidence to the contrary. That's the conviction bias at work. At its core, the conviction bias is the tendency to hold onto a belief or opinion with unwavering confidence, even when presented with evidence that contradicts that belief. It's a stubborn and often irrational way of thinking that can be difficult to overcome. One of the reasons the conviction bias is so powerful is a sense of self. When we hold of conviction, it becomes part of our identity. Admitting we're wrong and changing our beliefs can feel like a personal attack. We may feel embarrassed or ashamed that we were wrong in the first place. Another reason the conviction bias is so prevalent because of the way our brains process information. When we encounter new information that contradicts our beliefs, our brains go into overdrive trying to reconcile the new information with what we already believe to be true. This often results in a sort of mental gymnastics, where we twist and contort the new information to fit our existing beliefs. It's important to recognize that the conviction bias can lead us down a dangerous path. It can prevent us from seeing the world clearly and objectively, and can even lead to harmful actions or decisions. For example, if we hold on to a conviction that a certain group of people are inherently bad, we may be more likely to discriminate against them, or treat them unfairly. So, how can we overcome the conviction bias? First, we need to be open to the idea that we might be wrong. It can be difficult to admit when we're wrong, but it's an important step towards overcoming the conviction bias. Instead of clinging to our beliefs, we need to approach new information with an open mind and a willingness to be proven wrong. Another way to overcome the conviction bias is to seek out diverse perspectives and opinions. Surrounding ourselves with people who share our beliefs only reinforces the conviction bias. Instead, we should actively seek out people and information that challenge our beliefs and force us to think critically. We should be willing to change beliefs when presented with new evidence. It's not easy, but it's essential if we want to avoid falling prey to the conviction bias. We need to be willing to admit when we're wrong, and be open to changing our beliefs based on new information. In conclusion, the conviction bias is a powerful force that can cloud our judgment and prevent us from seeing the world objectively. It's important that we recognize when we're holding on to a belief with unwavering confidence and be willing to challenge ourselves and our beliefs. By being open to new perspectives and willing to change our beliefs when presented with new evidence, we can overcome the conviction bias and make better decisions for ourselves and for society as a whole. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Well, that has nothing to do with law at all. I'm sorry.
It doesn't. Yeah.
I mean that there are some major cases on recusal in the federal and the state system, and basically they have some nice platitudes about how pervasive extrajudicial bias requires recusal, but they almost never find pervasive extrajudicial recusal. Extrajudicial means if you're sitting on my case as a judge and you think I'm a total jerk, etc., and you think I'm evil based on what you've heard, that's fine. You can have that kind of bias,
Mm-hmm.
and they even say that is what judges are for, is to judge people. And but if you happen to have been a member of the same country club, and you thought I was cheating at golf or poker or something, you can't use that kind of bias. And as a matter of fact, the best way to disqualify a judge is to show that he is somehow a witness. If he either has or acts like he knows something that was not part of the case,
right?
That is potentially, even today, recusal material. And also, in answer to Kenneth Alt's case, a guardian ad litem who becomes a witness, a material witness in a case, that isn't grounds for disqualifying the guardian ad litem. If he becomes basically so involved, he or she becomes so involved in the case that he or she is basically testifying rather than representing a child's interest, then that is potentially grounds for disqualification. But it's as far as bias I think that judge hates me, forget it. Unless it was something that comes from, his family, or some social interaction, or gossip that he heard outside of court, and you can prove that. Those are, and even so, there is basically this dogma now, really, for the past 20 years since Bush became president, that judges should never recuse themselves. They should never back down, no matter how much you hate what they did, no matter how angry you are, no matter how biased you or even a reasonable person might think that their actions are. You're not getting rid of them.
Well, in my case, the judge was actually testifying. She started arguing with the investigator. She knew things about my children, about Peyton's immune system, and she even said it and said, "Doesn't this child have an immune system issue?" Well, and then the investigator says, "Well, we don't know because we haven't gotten that far." Then she starts explaining what the other attorney meant. She's testifying from the bench, and so and then she's talking about things that they haven't even discussed about my kids. So she's just arguing about my other daughter's diagnosis.
Did anyone point that out?
What's that?
Did anyone point that out?
No, they didn't. They didn't. Nor did they point out that she waived the reading of the affidavit without the truth in fact, nor did they point out the fact that she said she was trying to see how she could get jurisdiction in my case. That's all in the transcript. Yeah. I can't make
I mean, all I can say is I think that Louisiana, sadly, has some of the worst judges in the United States.
Yeah. And
I have literally been in courts in 40 or 42 of the United States. And the Louisiana judges in New Orleans do things that I just can't believe my eyes.
I believe that. I mean, I really do believe that. Like, I mean, they denied my I filed in Louisiana federal court permission to e-file because I have multiple sclerosis and epilepsy and I have a medically homebound child, and actually I'm fighting. I have recurrent thyroid cancer. I'm about to have to go through surgery and radiation, and so they denied it, saying that I showed that I could file things in person since I filed that. That's the stupidest I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, what are you talking? I had to come file this because you said I had to file it. Like, that doesn't even, there's like no rationale behind that. There's no like thinking. Like, I was very like plain English. Like, I have a medically homebound daughter. She doesn't have an immune system. You know, she has something called common variable immunodeficiency. I have multiple sclerosis. I have bilateral temporal lobe epilepsy. I'm fighting recurrent thyroid cancer, and I'm about to have to go through surgery and radiation. And it takes everything in me to find even someone to watch her long enough for me to go down there and file something. Like, it's a big deal for me to do that. And so, like, a very big deal. Like, I have no family. I have no one. And so instead of him granting the e-file permission, he denies it because I showed that I could come to the clerk of court and file that. That doesn't even make sense. Like,
that's definitely not the definition of the accommodations that they are required to make.
You're correct, under the American Disability Act. So, you know what? Oh well, so swell. I mean, the ADA says something completely different, and you know what? When you mess with the American Disability Act, that's a whole nother ball of wax. That's something else I cited in my federal claim. So, I mean,
I'm just curious. You never attempted to file in United States District Court for what would it be, the Western District of?
It's middle district for me. I did file in the middle district. I filed that after I filed the federal claims because it would only let me address the United States in the federal claims court. I filed in the middle district to address everyone individually. And I have 158 defendants. Which now I'm struggling with, like, well, how do I serve all those people? Because I'm indigent, and he did grant that. He did grant me pauper form, my pauper status. He granted the pauper status. But, like, how do I print out? How do I afford to print that out? I mean, can I request that the court allow me to e-file? I mean, excuse me, notify them through email. I mean, that's a lot of paper. You know how much ink that costs?
It is. I mean, I think you may have overdone it because if you got that many defendants, you're going to have that many different opponents.
Well, the issue is that they're employees underneath either DCFS or LDH, and so, I mean, I guess I could, and I did file a waiver. For LDH and DCFS, and Livingston Parish School Board, and Livingston Parish Sheriff's Department. So, like, the major, contenders, most of them are employees under that. So, I guess my question is, does that fall under the waiver?
What did what fall under the waiver?
The individual people, because they're employees. Like, their
service was covered by the waiver. They have to pay for service for you, but whether they have to provide you with printing or not is a separate issue. I mean,
that's a big issue, especially as large as my complaint was. So, like,
another thing I just want to point out to you and everybody else: getting granted IFP is not a good thing in federal court.
When you don't have a lawyer.
Well, let me just explain why. Under 28 USC 1915 A, if you are proceeding IFP, you are basically in the same category as a pro se prisoner writing from prison. And what that means is that the clerks, not the judge, the clerks can review and make all procedural decisions.
What?
Yes.
You are kidding.
I'm not kidding.
What is that? What is that? How
28 U.S.C. 1915A.
That's not due process of law. That's like a violation of due process of law.
It is nationwide. It is the Louisiana courts aren't even the worst in abusing that. The absolute worst are in the Ninth Circuit.
I have heard that. I've read that. I've heard about the Ninth Circuit.
The Ninth Circuit is very abusive to people who file IFP, in part because California is one of the richest states in the Union. They aren't quite as abusive in Louisiana because Louisiana is one of the poorest states in the Union. But nonetheless, it is a matter of real. I mean, I tell anybody who asks me, I tell them you should not file IFP no matter how broke you are, because as a matter of federal law, they not only can, they must discriminate against you.
That's a violation of due process, though. How do you violate? So it's a violation of due process within the Civil Code of Procedure.
It's law. I'm telling you.
That, I mean, I believe you, but how are they getting away with that? That's a violation of our amendment.
How are they getting away with it? The people who are most affected by this, by definition, are the least able to fight it.
Well, and the least able educated probably as well. I mean, the reason I can't fight is because no attorney will touch it because of my uncle. He's literally like put everyone out on an all points bulletin. I mean, I have contacted so many attorneys. I mean, even attorneys. Like at this point, like, do I need to contact an attorney out of state? Like I don't know what to do right now. I mean, I don't know what to do. I mean,
just keep on fighting.
That's all I can do.
That's it.
A good friend of mine in Atlanta will probably get upset if he hears that I'm saying this, but he and I both agree, so I won't name him, but because he's still a licensed attorney. But basically, what we need in this country is very closely analogous to what happened in France in 1789 to 1795, and in Russia from 1917 to 1922. We need a fairly sanguine, so as not to get this show canceled or anything, but we need a sanguine revolution.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
The American Revolution was much too kind and gentle, and the corruption that has come down from the top.
You're right.
Is too huge.
You're right. Until people stand up and go and refuse to take anymore and stand together. Do you know how the IDA became into effect? Disabled people crawled out of their wheelchairs on the steps of the Capitol. Like, if you look up pictures of that, it is very moving to see the fight that they had in them. Like, to fight for a basic human right. And what do we have in this is our children. This is I carried my children. I gave birth to them, and they abused my disabled child, and they stole her from me. They stole my other daughter. They stole my disabled son, and my other two disabled sons now. Like, and yet we just sit idly by. You know, how many legislators and senators I've informed, and they've done nothing. Nothing, absolutely nothing.
It's part of the system. I mean, the way they get elected is by being part of the system.
It's all about money. It's all embezzling money. That's all it's about. The whole thing is about money.
Mm-hmm. And that leads for another fight for another day, guys. We got to wrap this one up. We are way over our time.
I'm
Melissa,
sorry.
you guys
I always do.
Here tonight?
Yeah, send me your.
No, I mean, really, I think this is just something that really speaks for itself, because Darren, you and I have been following her fight for some time, and for every one step forward, she makes 3 steps back, and she still stands there, stands proud, and grabs her sword and charges.
Yes, she does. She does do that. Herbert, how about you?
Ashley, I'll text you his email.
Okay, thank you.
Herbert,
yes.
You got anything to say, buddy? Any last words for this?
Yes, I'm very happy that Charles is with us to share his professional and years of professionalism as an attorney so that we have a better understanding of how procedures and things take place, rather than us assuming and guessing and hearing hearsay and all that. So Charles is there to set us straight.
As long as everyone understands that I am not licensed in any state, so I can only give you the results of legal research. I cannot give you legal advice.
Well, it's the same thing as me. I'm not an active police officer, but they didn't take the police out of me. I know how things work.
Wait a minute. Hold on. I have something to say to that. Vincent Davis is licensed, and the only advice he gives is hire an attorney.
Hey, Charles, you got any last words, my man?
Well, not really. I mean, Ashley's situation is very moving, very, very disturbing, and all I can say is, the state of Louisiana, I love it here, but the judicial system here stinks to high heaven.
Seems to be that way. Ashley, you got any last words for everybody?
No, I don't. Just don't quit. You know, I won't go down without a fight. So.
No, you got plenty of people like us standing behind you, so don't ever think that you're alone.
Well, I guess I'd say one thing: keep on fighting, but don't go down. If you find that the fighting is crushing you, step away. Live to fight another.
I don't have a choice though, because they don't stop. They haven't stopped. The retaliation hasn't stopped. So this is the only way for me to fight, is because they won't stop and they won't leave me alone. That's the problem.
And this is what they do. All right, guys. Thank you guys very much for tonight. And we'll catch you guys all tomorrow night on that same time. Thanks, guys.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Here we go. I'm sorry, I'm slow tonight. This computer is just slow. I think that's it. All right. Well, that's Ashley's fight. You know, like Leslie Brown says, make sure if you're going to fall back, you fall on your backside, because if you're looking up, you can get up. This fight is very hard, and it's not to be done by yourself. There's plenty of us around that are supporting you. There's plenty of support groups. There's plenty of people. So don't ever go at this alone. Ever, because there's no need. There's plenty of us to be by your side. So I'm the CPS Punisher. I'm getting out of here. See you guys tomorrow. Like, subscribe, share, comment, all that good stuff. And don't forget tomorrow, Tony Friday. Tony Rugley will be here with us on Friday evening to speak about current events. So make sure you join us tomorrow night.